that seals fate, the end of every heart. I'm no villain nor hero.
I am Lucius Aeternus. While you're here, breathing, living through another day, millions of lives across the world dissolve into the air like a forgotten sigh. Don't think this is far removed from you. Death doesn't warn, doesn't send signals. It just comes, quietly, and takes what is most precious to us, time. Today, I will show you 3 real stories. Lives that followed their usual paths until the moment when everything changed. They didn't know their next step would be their last. And do you know when your time will come? The line between being here and being gone is much thinner than you think. Join me. But remember, each of us is walking toward the same end. The only difference is when. Story 1. The Silent Earth, the Tragedy of the Sinkhole. I have witnessed countless endings. Each carries its own mark, yet they all share one thing: they arrive when least expected. This is the story of Alia Moreau, a woman whose quiet existence crumbled beneath her feet, both literally and emotionally. That morning in New York, everything seemed to follow its usual rhythm. The hum of the streets, pedestrians rushing by, the honking of yellow taxis. Alia, a 45-year-old tourist, wandered through the city, her mind elsewhere. It was her last week of vacation, and her thoughts were far from the bustling city. She thought of her daughter, what awaited her at home, and the dinner she still needed to plan. A quiet melancholy settled in as she gazed into the shop windows. Inside, a whisper of regret lingered, small missteps in life, moments of love that perhaps she had never fully expressed. But, like many of us, Alia pushed these feelings aside. There's still time, she thought. I can make it right. Yet time has its own plans. The sun glinted off the city's old buildings, casting a warm glow over everything. Alia paused in a small square, admiring the architecture around her. But then, something. A faint tremor underfoot, a subtle shift. The ground felt different, as if something beneath was moving. She glanced around, but life continued as usual. She shook off the feeling and moved on. Moments later, as she left the shop with a gift for her daughter, a soft smile touched her lips. She pictured herself handing the gift over, hearing her daughter's laughter. And then, without warning, the ground beneath her gave way. No scream. No time. The earth opened up, and within seconds, Alia was swallowed by the void. The sound of cracking concrete was all that echoed, the sudden collapse of life as it was. One moment, she was there, the next, she was gone. What had been a bright, sunny morning turned into a shadowed abyss. Rescue teams arrived quickly, but they found only rubble and silence. For days they dug, searching, but Alia seemed to have been taken somewhere beyond reach. Only a pair of shoes was found, as if the earth itself had chosen to keep her. Her family, shattered, never received answers. The questions only grew. What did she feel? Did she know what was happening? Could we have done something? But death, as it often does, remains silent. It comes, it takes, and it leaves behind a void. A hole, not just in the ground, but in the hearts of those left behind. Life is like that, I reflect, my voice deep and steady. We trust the ground beneath us, the solidity of the world around us. But in the end, the only certainty is that it can all collapse in an instant. For Alia, the earth betrayed her. For others, it may be something else. What remains, always, is the silence that holds all the unspoken words, all the embraces never shared. And in the end, it is that silence that takes more than death itself. Story 2. The Sailor's Sacrifice. Life is delicate, like a thin thread that can snap at any moment. Death never sends a warning, it simply happens. And sometimes, it places us in situations where we must make choices we never thought we'd face. It was a golden afternoon in Portofino, a coastal gem in northern Italy, known for its crystal-clear waters and lavish parties. Lorenzo Bianchi, a 40-year-old sailor, had been working aboard a 2-story yacht for years. The sun danced on the waves as passengers laughed and swayed to the music, oblivious to the vastness of the sea around them. To them, it was just another Mediterranean party. But for Lorenzo, the sea was more than just a backdrop, it was his sanctuary, his home. And on that afternoon, something felt wrong. The wind barely stirred, but Lorenzo recognized the subtle signs. Something hung in the air, a stillness before the storm. The yacht, which had glided smoothly across the water, began to sway in a way that went unnoticed by the guests. Only Lorenzo, with his experienced eye, could sense the tension building beneath the surface. He glanced toward the horizon and saw the first ripples. The sea, usually so familiar, seemed restless, as if preparing for something unseen. He shifted his gaze to the deck, where guests, unaware, danced and smiled. His thoughts drifted to his daughter, Sophia. It had been years since he'd last seen her. The last letter he received from her had held a glimmer of hope, a possibility of reconciliation. He wondered if he'd have time to mend what had been broken. When the first large wave struck, the guests laughed, thinking it was just part of the fun. But Lorenzo knew better. He ran to warn the captain, but before he could speak, the yacht lurched violently to one side. The laughter turned to screams. In an instant, the world that had been filled with joy became a scene of chaos. The boat capsized completely, throwing everyone into the cold waters of the Mediterranean. Lorenzo surfaced, gasping for air. The sound of the frigid water swallowing the boat and the desperate cries of the passengers filled the air. He looked toward the shore, now far away, and knew he could swim to safety. He was the best swimmer in his crew, a natural in the water. But all around him, people thrashed in panic, some without life jackets, others frozen in shock. Amid the chaos, Lorenzo spotted a woman struggling to stay afloat. Without hesitation, he swam to her and helped her slip on a life jacket that had been drifting nearby. As he did, a pang of regret and exhaustion gripped his chest. Each life he saved brought Sophia's face to mind. I failed her so many times, he thought, as he secured another life jacket onto a man who could barely breathe. Maybe here, I can make something right. The currents grew stronger, pulling them further from safety. Lorenzo's muscles ached, the cold starting to seep into his bones. But he didn't stop. With every person he rescued, it felt like he was trying to save a part of his own soul. The sea, once a friend, now felt dark and unforgiving, its waves battering his body relentlessly. Then, as he went to save another person, Lorenzo realized his mistake. He hadn't put on a life jacket himself. In the chaos of helping others, he had forgotten to protect himself. Now, as the current dragged him under and his strength faded, he knew he was running out of time. The water around him was as cold as death itself, and his vision began to blur. He looked up at the sky, where the sun, now sinking low, painted the horizon with a deep orange glow. He wasn't afraid. There was only a quiet acceptance. Maybe, he thought, in saving these lives, I've found my way back to Sophia. But he knew he'd never have that chance. Lorenzo stopped resisting. He let the sea take him, knowing that, on that afternoon, he had chosen to sacrifice his own life to save others. 2 days later, Lorenzo's body was found floating near the shore, just a few meters from where he had helped the others. His death wasn't an accident, it was a choice. A choice of sacrifice. Sometimes, it's at the edge of death that we discover who we truly are. And Lorenzo, in the end, found the peace he had been searching for. Story 3. The Fall of Magnus and Ymir. Let me take you to the dizzying heights of Trolltunga in Norway, where the beauty of nature hides the ever-present terror of human fragility. This cliff, renowned for its breathtaking views, juts out over a void, drawing adventurers with its promise of unmatched scenery and the looming risk of a deadly fall. Magnus and Ymir, childhood friends, arrived at Trolltunga that summer with hearts full of excitement and nostalgia. They were there to celebrate life and freedom, just as they had done so many times before. But what they didn't realize was that this reunion would be their last. Beneath his carefree demeanor, Magnus carried more than just a backpack full of climbing gear. The hike to the top had been long, but the view made every step worthwhile. Standing on the edge of the stone, they could see the vast Ringedalsvatnet lake below, reflecting the overcast Norwegian sky. The wind swept through, as if fate itself was watching them closely. Magnus, perhaps without realizing it, felt the weight of the moment. He had always been the impulsive one, the one who pushed limits, and today, that limit would be fatal. "Let's get a picture closer to the edge," Amir suggested, laughing with the confidence of someone who believes the worst will never happen. But Magnus wanted more. With a few swigs from the bottle of wine they had brought along, he made the reckless choice to step past the safety barrier. It wasn't the first time they had flirted with danger. They were laughing, as if fear had already been conquered, but sometimes, fear is the only thing keeping us alive. Then, Magnus slipped. The laughter stopped. In an instant, he reached out, grabbing Amir's arm. Their eyes locked, and in that brief moment, there were no more jokes, no more bravado, only panic. Amir pulled with all the strength he had, but the weight of his friend was too much. And then, the inevitable happened. The fall was eerily silent. The sound of their bodies slicing through the air, powerless, was swallowed by the vastness of the canyon. Within seconds, they were out of sight. The echo of their screams vanished into the depths, and Trolltunga, which had witnessed countless stories of triumph and beauty, now bore witness to an irreversible tragedy. While other hikers scrambled in panic to call for help, the abyss had already claimed its victims. Magnus and Amir had never imagined that nature, in its calmest form, could be so unforgiving. Their bodies were found hours later, shattered by the fall. The laughter that had once filled the air was forever lost among the rocks, replaced by the chilling silence of sudden death. The story of Magnus and Amir reminds us just how thin the line between life and death really is, fragile as that moment of hesitation before a leap. It wasn't the wind or the wine that claimed them. It was their choices, the unconscious desire to challenge something greater than themselves. Trolltunga, which so many ascend to admire, became their natural tombstone. Life, no matter how vibrant, can be snuffed out in an instant. Magnus and Amir faced the void, and the void swallowed them whole. In the end, it doesn't matter how much we prepare or how hard we try to avoid it, death comes for all of us, silent and relentless. Some meet it with a whisper, others with a stifled scream, but everyone will meet it. Alya, Lorenzo, Magnus, and Amir, like all of us, they never thought that would be their final moment, their last step, their last glimpse of the world. But it was. Death doesn't need a reason, nor does it give a warning. It simply arrives, and when it does, what's left is the void we leave behind. Perhaps the real question isn't when death will come, but how we choose to live until it does. What do we do with the time we have left? It's only when we understand that the ground could give way at any moment that we truly grasp the value of every breath, every choice, every person we love. That is both the gift and the burden of mortality. One day, I'll be there for you too. And on that day, together, we'll take the next step into the unknown. Until then, I'll see you on the day of your death.
In shadows I walk. I've been here from the start. I am the hand that seals fate, the end of every heart. I'm no villain nor hero. I'm the peace amidst the pain, the angel who comes, who takes, yet offers love again.